Hey there Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Piece of Paper. Welcome to this week's video, or welcome to the second video for today. The first one was a bit of a self-indulgent pickups video, but it is kind of pertinent because of the topic that I want to talk about today. So we're taking a break from the Dreamcast as part of the month with just for 1 week. Obviously we looked at Sega Rally on the bit between, so there is still a bit of a Dreamcast fix if you want to go and have a look at that. See my Wednesday video. But the reason I wanted to talk about the topic today that I'm going to be talking about is because I think it's really important as a retro gamer, as a gaming fan generally, but also as a retro gaming fan. I think this is a really significant moment. I am, of course, talking about Sony's recent announcement that from 2028, there will be no physical game discs being released anymore. They will only be digital. So, it's a really significant moment in gaming history. Gaming history, which has been around, certainly in the homes for almost 50 years, since the Atari 2600, when you were picking up cartridges all the way back then, and even a little bit before with the likes of the Magnavox Odyssey. So we're talking about history that is 50 plus, around 50 years old, of us having physical media with the games that we buy, to a world where that will no longer be the case. And I think it is a really, really significant moment. So I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about why it's happened, but also what's happened before in other industries where this kind of digitization thing has happened. I want to talk about the impact on the industry as a whole, and also on us retro gamers out there, and why that's important, because I think that is also very, very significant. And I also want to talk about where it might be quite good as well. So I know loads of people have done videos on this already. Loads of people have got opinions on this, and I'm sure that I'm going to be parroting some of the same things, but I just really wanted to get my thoughts down onto some virtual videotape and get that out onto YouTube and really kind of gather my thoughts on it, because I think it is really, really important for us gamers. So let's dive into the first section, and I'm going to talk about where this has happened before and why perhaps this time round it's a little bit different. I'll see you in there. So this is not something new, right? This is not something that hasn't happened before. I'll talk about some of the other industries where this has happened, and I'll also talk about quickly about gaming itself. This is not something new to us. Since the PS3 era, we have been able to download games digitally onto our consoles and play them on a PC. That's been for much longer. We've been able to do that for a long, long time. With the advent of systems like Steam, online and digital downloads of games is something that we've been able to do for a long time. So it's not something, this is not a new thing to us. It's something we're very used to, and I make very good use of it. I buy games on PlayStation Store, from Xbox Live or Nintendo, and get the digital versions of those from time to time. And I'm used to also having subscription services where I can play games either streamed or they are part of a library that I can download, especially on the Xbox. Game like Forza 6, for instance, the last Indiana Jones game that I played, all games that were available on Xbox Live, and I downloaded those onto the console and played those there. And I've played games streamed, like I said before. Same on PSN. Buying additional packs for things. That is something that we've done a lot of. The other thing is that it's also not that new in as much as we are still buying discs, but certainly since the PS4 era, quite often we're buying a disc and then we're putting it into the machine, and then it's downloading a huge chunk of data to actually be able to play the game. A good example of that is something like No Man's Sky, which I have for the PS4. I play it on the PS5. I still have to put the PS4 disc in, but the entire game is downloaded, and for me to play it I have to be connected online for it to be able to connect to Hello Games servers. It just requires the PS4 disc as like a key to show that I've purchased it, and that's it. So this is not something this is also something that's very, very common now, and we're seeing it increasingly on the Switch too as well. You buy a little cartridge, but really there's nothing on that cartridge. It's just a key to prove that you've bought the game. So then we're not unfamiliar with this in the gaming industry, and in some ways we've been living through a bit of a golden era, in as much as we've had the ability to do both. We were able to buy games on physical media if we want to have them on physical media and keep them as part of our collection, and we've also had the ability to buy the digital versions or add-on packs and all those kind of things as well. So on the face of it, at the moment, things aren't too bad. We have seen this happen elsewhere, and we've seen it happen elsewhere very successfully in other industries as well. We've seen it happen, especially in the music industry. I remember having a conversation 25 years ago saying that music will never, people will always want to buy CDs. They want the cover art, they want the physical disc. And what happened was, well, that changed completely, and people now buy, most people now have a Spotify subscription or an iTunes subscription, Apple Music subscription, and by them, they don't buy music anymore. They just have access to this huge library of music all the time. The interesting thing about music, of course, though, is that people are now still going out and buying. There's been a bit of a resurgence of CDs. There's definitely been a resurgence of people buying vinyl, which even the CD replaced before it. And even cassette tapes, which is quite unusual as well. So we've seen a bit of a resurgence there. But the thing is with music is it doesn't, music is not like gaming. Music doesn't really date or age in the same way. Games from years past, I think, have more nostalgia because they are so different. A game from 1990 is very different to a game from 2026. Music, yes, there's different music styles and genres that evolve over the years, but you can listen to a piece of music from any era, even classical music from hundreds of years ago, and it's still music. Gaming has changed so much over a period of time. I think it's a little bit different to compare. So, in some ways, it's kind of a different proposition. Probably where it's a little bit closer is perhaps with movies. People have pretty much stopped buying physical movie media now. I mean, people do still occasionally buy a Blu-ray or a DVD, but most movies I watch now, we have access to so many movies on streaming services, like Disney Plus and Netflix and all those kind of things. So it's moved very much towards that subscription model. Buying a physical disc for a movie now is kind of rare, actually. It's not something that we tend to do now. Most people don't really do it anymore. Some people are collectors, they will do it, but I think probably I speak for the vast majority of the population to say actually most things are digital now. So we have seen this happen before. Movies, again, though, are a little bit more like music in that you can, it's a different proposition, and movies do date more than music does, but I think, again, it's still a very different proposition to playing a game. So yes, that is, I think it is a little bit different for gaming, just because of how gaming has changed and evolved over the years. Gaming is a bit of a unique industry, and whilst there are definitely similarities with the going full digital for gaming, I think there are some key differences. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk about why I think this move from Sony is really bad for everybody, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about why it's bad in particular for us as retro gamers as well. I'll see you in there. So why is it bad for everyone? Before I talk about why it's particularly bad for us as retro gamers, I'll tell you why it's bad for everybody. It's bad for everybody because we no longer own the games. Now, if you're thinking about music or movies, then there's lots of streaming services out there, and you'll generally be able to find most movies across one of those streaming services. They'll switch around, but they'll usually be available, and if they're not, at some point they'll become available again anyway. You can usually find them. Plus the fact all the old stuff is still on DVD and tape and whatever anyway. So if it's an old obscure movie, then you can find it. If it's a new movie, it'll be on a streaming service somewhere anyway, because most of the time they're usually the ones that have made it. For music, like if your favourite band, for whatever reasons, licensing runs out on any particular music streaming platform, you can just move to another one or subscribe to another one. It kind of works that way. But when you think about gaming, it's a bit different, because gaming, not only, music and movies, they're just storing those music and movies and then streaming them to your device. For gaming, a lot of games have moved to an online model where there's lots of data for the game itself, and sometimes even use of servers, like I mentioned No Man's Sky before. And so they're more expensive to host. And also companies like Sony, who have lots of their own games, who've got games that are expensive to host, might decide one day, do you know what? It's too expensive to host this anymore. We only have a handful of players now, so we're just going to turn that server off. That game is gone forever. I played Afterburner a few months back, and it was the modern version of Afterburner. I can't think what it was called. And basically, if you hadn't already got the digital version of that on your PS3, that was it. It was gone. I think it was on the 360. I was playing that, and that's it. It's gone. If you don't own that digital version now, that if you had the digital version of that game, you could still play it. Nowadays, you might even have the digital version of the game, and you can't play it anymore because there's things that are needed on the server that support it if that's turned off. So that game and potentially and so many others are just gone. They're just gone forever. When Hello Games turn off the servers for No Man's Sky, that's it. No Man's Sky is finished. There'll be no more No Man's Sky, and it'll just be in our memories. We won't be able to ever go play it again, and that is very, very sad. It's okay because it's not at the moment, because you've got lots of other choice of other games that are coming out at the same time on physical media that you can still play, and that's fine. So games like that, you accept that. That's just how it is. But that is increasingly going to be the model. You won't be able to share games anymore. You won't be able to buy second-hand games anymore for anything new. You won't be able to just say, oh, I bought this game, I'll lend it to my brother or my friend or my sister or whatever. I won't be able to do that anymore. It's just not a thing. That's it. Once those digital versions that you download, that digital version, you don't own that version anymore. You might still pay the same amount of money for it, because you absolutely do, but you are able to use it for as long as Sony or Microsoft or Nintendo decide that they are happy for you to use it. And once they've decided it's no longer economically viable, that game is gone, and that's it forever. So that's why it's bad for all of us. And obviously the price is also dictated. I tend to find that buying a physical game can quite often be cheaper than buying the digital version from the Sony store on PSN. Sometimes quite significantly cheaper, in fact. So again, Sony will dictate the price. They will decide how much they're going to charge for games, and you will have to pay it if you want to play that game. And they might keep it at that price forever if they so choose. It may never come down in price. Whereas in the second-hand trading market, that price is determined by the demand for that particular thing. And so if that game isn't very good, but you still want to play it, well, it might be cheap because there's not much demand for it. There's lots of physical discs, and so the price will drop. Sony might decide that they're going to be bullish about it and just leave the price of whatever they want at some ludicrously high price, and that is that. So it's going to be a great money-making machine for Sony. It's going to be bad for all of the rest of us, and it is particularly bad, I think, for the retro gaming scene. So let me talk now a little bit about why I think it is particularly bad for us. I'll see you in there. Now, as a retro gamer, I think this news is particularly bad. I think it's actually quite devastating. Now, we've been in the industry playing games for over 50 years, and all the way through that time, over those last 50 years, we've got cartridges like this, or we've got CDs or DVDs or Blu-rays, and we're used to buying a game and collecting a game, and this game is ours. If I can find an Atari 2600, I can play this game as long as this game survives, basically. And that is the point that is going to be really tough, because in 20 years' time, 20 years on from 2028, after the end of physical media, basically it means that the generation behind my generation, the retro gamers of 20 years' time, it's going to be very different for them, because they won't be able to collect these games. They'll still be able to collect the games and discs and everything else from this era and from beyond. So they'll be playing classic PS3 games, PS4 games, and possibly even some PS5 games. But after 2028, that finishes. And so in 20 years' time, all of that 20-year period will be totally dependent on whether Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, whoever, allow those games to still be available and published on their site. You won't own them anymore. You won't be able to collect them anymore. That's it. It'll be finished. There will be no retro game scene as we remember it today. Now, that might sound really dramatic, but I think it's really important, because throughout the history of gaming, one of the things that I particularly enjoy as a retro gamer, I'm not a massive collector, but one of the things I really do enjoy is finding things that I really enjoyed back in the day, finding the games again and being able to play them again. Now, there is always a library online of emulated games and all those kind of things, but that will also not be a thing, because the the games makers, the Sonys of this world, will have complete reign over that. There won't be any kind of physical media. When you go to a website and download a backup copy of a game, well, that's come from some physical media in the first place. You'll never get access to that again. So there's no vault of there's going to be no vault of games other than what Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, and any others choose to put in that vault. And the other side of it, which I think is also really sad, is that there are a lot of businesses around the UK now that just won't exist in 20 years' time. We've already seen a lot of the high street sellers of games, certainly in the UK, and I think it is the same, around the world, and I know it is in the US as well, of companies that, just sell video games. So the company Game and many years ago Electronics Boutique and places like that, and even HMV, which sold games, music store in the UK here, they've either had to change their business model or they've disappeared completely. Game has pretty much vanished from the high streets now. They don't have any dedicated stores, just a few concessions in some Sports Direct stores. So they already went. But we also have a lot of other businesses. We have CEX, which is a national chain here in the UK, which basically survives on selling secondhand games, music, movies, and tech. And again, that is gonna, the games element of that, which is a massive part of that business. In 20 years' time, that will no longer be a thing. You'll only be able to buy games from now and prior. So they will go. But the saddest part about it is I go to a lot of gaming markets, and there's lots of independent sellers there selling games and consoles and old hardware and tech. And again, that will survive for some time. But again, in 20 years' time, that just won't be a thing, because, increasingly the stuff that is old now, well, that'll be the stuff that people will continue to collect, but it will be even older in 20 years' time and even rarer. And so it's going to change a lot. So that is a really sad state of affairs, that a lot of these independent businesses, there will just be less of them. The really old retro stuff that we get now obviously will be more expensive, as it would be anyway, but there'll be just nothing behind it. There'll be just nothing else coming into the market that is considered retro. And whilst we may still be able to play those things, and I'll talk about that in the next section in a moment, we are going to be totally at the behest of the games producers now. We will never own a game again. It will just be something that we pay a large sum of money to play, and there'll be no retro scene, not as we know it. I mean, there probably will be some kind of retro scene, but no retro scene as we know it in 20 years' time. There is some hope with the likes of Evercade and companies like that still continue to push physical media. But obviously that again is retro games rather than anything new. So yeah, it's a sad day. It's a really sad day. And I'm also quite sad that I won't own a copy of Grand Theft Auto, though you will get the box. Apparently what I've been told is you'll get the box, and you'll just get a digital download key in it, but hopefully you still get the map and the other bits and pieces in it, which is all really part of the fun of buying a Grand Theft Auto game. But yeah, it's going to take up a lot of space on my PlayStation for sure. So yeah, sad times indeed. But maybe it's not all bad. Let's go and have a look at maybe where there might be some ray of sunshine, where there might be a bit of light in this sad story in the next section. Thanks for sticking with me so far. So I just wanted to talk about why this might not be a bad thing, why all is not necessarily lost. And I've got a little bit of evidence for why it might be the case, but it is heavily caveated. So I think the reason why there is a potential for this to be a good thing. We've spoken about music and we've spoken about movies, and how nowadays everybody goes, oh, wasn't it great when we used to go to Blockbuster Video on a Friday? Was it though? You used to go spend 2 hours down there, you'd rent an overpriced video, probably wasn't the one you wanted because they'd already got rid of it, buy some ludicrously priced popcorn and come home, and then you'd spend so long at Blockbuster Video, you didn't have time to watch it, and then you get fined for not rewinding your video properly. It wasn't all great. It was an experience, but it wasn't, like, you'd be like, oh, should we go and get a movie? Oh, I don't know if I can be bothered to go out and go and get a movie. Like, now we can sit and we can watch whatever we want, whenever we want. Great. And in theory, that is potentially the future for gaming as well. We could be in a world where we don't have to wait for we don't have to go and buy a physical copy from somewhere. We'll go down to our local video shop, not that there are many of them left now, or go to CEX and find a second-hand copy of it, or whatever. We'll have that available whenever we want to play it. So that is a potentially good thing. Again, in the music industry also, we have this access now to so much music. The only caveat to that is that nowadays it's, I would buy a CD, an album, and I would play it to death, and I would know every song on that album, and I would know all of the lyrics on that album. Nowadays, I'll just go and find a curated playlist of something that I want to play for whatever mood I'm in. And I do get to hear a lot of new music, but it's not, I'm not kind of going, oh, so-and-so's got a new album out, I'm going to go listen to that. There's almost too much choice, if that's a thing. And I do feel that with games, with online gaming, I've got so many games in my library that I've got through the sort of monthly game from PSN over the last, 5-6 years or whatever. And I've probably played about 1% of the games in there. There's so many games in there that I just don't even know where to start with it. So I'm probably still going to gravitate to the AAA titles anyway. But on the plus side, I do have a huge amount of choice. If there's a new game that I want to play, I can probably hunt through there and find a game that I want to play. Same with Game Pass on the Xbox. There are loads of really good games on there, and I can play things like Forza 6. I don't have to go and buy it. It's great because I've got Game Pass, and that's brilliant. So, there's lots and lots of choice. I think that's the first thing. When it comes to the retro games, well, all is not necessarily lost there either, because if you look at someone like Nintendo, if you get Nintendo Online, you get the systems in there. There are quite a lot of games that are available on the Switch and the Switch 2 from old consoles, including the Mega Drive. So you can go and find some old games, and certainly on Sony Store, on Sony's PSN network, there are quite a lot of older games on there. Same on Microsoft as well. But there's not millions. There's not loads and loads and loads. A lot of the games that I want to kind of go revisit, you just can't find them. So there is choice. And you can go back and play some games that you remember from years past, and hopefully in 20 years time there are games that are coming out now that you will still be able to go back and play. My hope is that with the money that the likes of Sony and Microsoft, and I'm assuming Microsoft will go the same way, it certainly feels that direction of travel, especially with the advent of the Steam machine coming out soon, which will be a streaming only service. Nintendo are already pretty much moving towards that model already. I'm hoping that with the money they save, that they say they're going to save by not producing physical media anymore, they will invest that money back in improving the libraries of games that we've got, and that there is more of an effort to keep games alive for longer. That's going to be the tell for me. And if there is a commitment to doing that, and that commitment continues, so that we get to a position where, if you go on Spotify or you go on Apple Music, you can find pretty much any music track that you want from any artist that you want. Pretty much all music, almost all music is available there. I'm kind of hoping that is the way that gaming goes. If it does, if every game that there is ever going to be, at the very least, remains on those systems, then we might be in with a fighting chance of surviving, and having a retro scene in 20 years time. But I am somewhat skeptical, I have to say. So there you go. That is my thoughts on it. I am sad about it. I accept that it is the march of progress. We've seen it happen before. Yeah, let's grab my final thoughts and wrap up for this week. Okay, let's grab my final thoughts on this matter then. Love to hear your thoughts. What do you think? How concerned are you? Are you pleased about this news? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's just my opinion. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I kind of hope I am proven wrong, really, because I think, for me, generally speaking, I think this is a bad thing. I totally get it. As someone who has spent an entire life alongside technology, working in technology, you know, all of those kind of things. I totally understand the reasons why. From Sony's point of view, it makes good business sense to do this. All the threats of people going and everything else like that, you know, that's short-lived. Sony will know that people are going to be angry about it. People will know, they know that people will probably go and sign up for another service somewhere. But look, it doesn't matter which service you sign up for. If you sign up for Microsoft have already been pushing this for years anyway with Game Pass. Their Game Pass service is really, really good. They've been pushing for it. This is what they want. We've got the Steam machine. Steam, Valve Corporation have only ever been doing this. You know, this is their way of doing things as well. So this is Sony keeping up with the market. Nintendo are pushing towards that as well. Don't be fooled into thinking you're buying a full game whenever you buy a cartridge for the Nintendo Switch 2, for instance. So all of them are doing it. Sony is probably more significant because they were probably the ones that were the furthest behind. You know, their online service arguably is not as good as Microsoft's. Nintendo have done it by stealth. Steam are already doing it. So Sony announcing this and everybody going, oh, that's it, I'm going to go elsewhere. Well, Sony know that people are going to do that, or they're going to threaten to do that. The reality is it will be a blip because this is the new normal. This is the future. So I get it. I totally get it. But it is bad. It is bad because it marks the end of an era, and not necessarily in a good way. I think this is bad for retro gaming. I think it's bad for the industry right now. But I do hope, like I said in the last section there, I do hope that they recognise the need to keep that history and to go more down that model of you know, the likes of Netflix do with movies, or the likes of Apple Music or Spotify do with music. I think that is the important thing. I think that's the other side of it as well, is also paying for games. I think in the same way will probably be different. I see us moving much more to a subscription model. I see Sony moving more towards a mode that Microsoft are in with Game Pass, where you won't necessarily have to go out and buy your AAA titles. They will just, you know, apart from a few like Grand Theft Auto, a lot of the games will just be available as part of your subscription, and that could be good. That could be good. But I just hope that you know, Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, whatever, really do offer more choice of older games, and that they keep those older games alive and available, well, forever ideally. So that they're not lost. I think that for me is the most worrying aspect. So there you go. Like I said, love to hear your thoughts on the matter as well. If you do enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button as well. We will be returning to normal service next week. I will be talking about the Dreamcast again, so we'll be chatting about that next week, and there will of course be another bit between next week as well with Dreamcast game. Yeah, so thanks for listening, thanks for tuning in, and yeah, obviously please do hit that like and subscribe button as well if you do enjoy the content. And yeah, just leaves me to say, until the next time, I'll see you around. Until then, bye for now.